Welcome back to Tinfoil Tells. I'm your host, Brandon Wright. Tonight's episode, we're going to be joined by my guest, Leigh Thatcher. Leigh has had some experiences in life with UFOs and some other things that he wanted to come on here and share with us. So I'm definitely looking forward to talking with him. But before we bring Leigh on, if you'd like to be a guest on Tinfoil Tells, there's a couple things you can do. You can send an email to tinfoiltellspodcast@gmail.com, or you can go to tinfoiltells.com and go to the contact section and send me a message that way. Both ways works. Just make sure to reach out and we'll get something scheduled for a future episode. And just so everyone's aware, I am booked out pretty far. So if you would like to be on an episode, you need to hurry up and try and send something. That way we can get you added to the schedule. Otherwise, it's just going to be continuing to be further and further out before I'm able to get new guests on. If you would like to help the podcast out, please continue to share it around. Word of mouth is the best way of helping the podcast grow. It's been doing that pretty well here lately. So I definitely appreciate everyone out there who's been sharing it. Wherever you listen to Tinfoil Tells at, whatever episodes you like, make sure to share them. It does help out. You can also help by leaving a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to Tinfoil Tells at. So if you're on Apple, click the 5 stars. On Spotify, wherever you're listening. It's definitely appreciated. You can become a member of the Patreon. There's a free tier and a paid tier. The paid tier is only $1.99 a month, but you get early access to all of the episodes, and they're all ad-free. So up to 2 months worth of episodes early. You also get access to Crinkle Conspiracies, the podcast is exclusively on the Patreon. And finally, make sure to follow me around on all the social medias. But now it is time to bring on Leigh. I really hope you guys enjoy the conversation. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. I'd like to take this time to welcome my guest tonight, Leigh. Thanks for coming on here and talking with me.
Thanks for the invite.
There's a little bit of a time difference. I know you're about 5 hours ahead of me, so trying to work it in here so you're not up till like early in the morning. But
No, I've got a cup of coffee, so I'll be all right.
no, I definitely appreciate it. Do you want to let the audience know a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Leigh Thatcher, and it's spelled Leigh. I'm 49. I grew up in South London, where I had my first UFO encounter, which I'll chat about in a minute. I've got 2 children, 25 and 27. I'm a landscape gardener. I've been a UFO guest speaker at a conference. I've done other podcasts and interviews and stuff like that. I live with my partner of 31 years. And as Brandon says, it's 2:30 in the morning. So I've got a cup of coffee. So I've got a load of notes in front of me because of the when I usually do this talk, I'm able to just sort of talk without any writing or anything. But because it's so early in the morning, I've had to write everything down. So I grew up I started off in a place called Addington in Croydon in London in 75. And the first few incidents that happened were when I had a christening set, like a knife, fork and spoon. I wasn't christened, but it was a gift from a relative. And this cutlery set, like knives, christening set, would just go missing. And it would go missing for days on end. And it would just turn up on top of the cutlery set in the drawer. And nobody would know how it had got there. And this was quite a frequent occurrence. And so that was my first kind of introduction, if you like, to spooky things. And go on.
I was going to say, how old were you at that point?
So I was a newborn baby.
Okay.
So, I was newborn. My parents at the time, like as I was growing up, they would recount these stories of the house that we lived in. The house was only built in, I think, the late 60s, I think. It was a big council estate. Um, yeah, they would recount these stories of these black balls of light that would dart across the room. Um, they didn't know what they were, whether they were spirits or ghosts, whatever. But again, that was so. There's a lot of stories in the neighborhood of weird stuff going on in the people's houses. But we moved from there. I moved around quite a lot as a kid. Um, but yeah, we moved from house to house, and by the time I was 7, my parents split up. My dad went his way, and I went with my mum, and then I went back with my dad, and then backwards and forwards. I've got an older brother and sister, and we'd all be separated over time. And then we moved in with my new stepdad. So I would have been, 7 or 8 at the time. And he had a son called Darren. Now, my stepdad was in the Marines. So there was a lot of, he knew a lot about tanks, guns, all this sort of thing. We had a lot of guns in the house. So we knew, we'd go out and shoot and do all that sort of stuff. And one evening, me and my stepbrother, I was 10 at the time, we'd gone cycling. And it was one afternoon, we were cycling through this playing field. And he got off his bike and he said, come and have a look at this. And we both watched this light in the sky. Now, again, he grew up knowing all about military aircraft and all stuff like that. So he knew the difference between a plane and a helicopter. And we watched this white light in the sky. So this would have been 1985, and I would have been 10. And this white light was then accompanied by a few other lights, and it formed what looked like a diamond shape. And then this craft shape thing, whatever it was, lowered itself past the horizon. And that was it. That was the end of that sighting. We got on our bikes, we cycled home. But it's stuck in my head. What did we see?
You said it was diamond shaped?
Yeah, it was diamond. Wasn't a, yeah, it was diamond shaped, as in there's a top, bottom, and 2 sides, and it looked like a diamond, but it was made up of a few lights.
And what color was it?
From what I can remember, it was just white. So the lights were white. It was late afternoon.
It wasn't prismy looking.
It wasn't what, sorry?
Like a prism. Like you could see kind of like colors reflecting from it.
No,
Okay.
no. I mean, it was over and done with relatively quick. Couple of minutes, I think. We went home and we spoke to our respective parents. My mum was kind of dismissive of it. My stepdad, he was the same, and that was it. Thought nothing of it. And then it was a few weeks later. I started having quite bad nightmares, and at the time, I didn't really think much of it because they were just nightmares to me. But it was a reoccurring nightmare, and the nightmare was I'd be lying flat on a table, and there would be these what I would call the little workers, and they didn't speak, and I couldn't see them, but I knew they were there, and I knew that they were talking to each other, but they weren't audibly talking. And then the next part of the nightmare, this machine with, I always described it as letters and numbers put over the top of each other. Now, as an adult, I would say that was more like a symbol. So this machine had symbols on, and I called it a conveyor belt of words. and this machine would come towards me with these symbols on, and I'd have to read what was on this machine. Um, and then I'd wake up, and although the actual dream itself, there was nothing bad that happened, I just knew that it was a terrifying nightmare. And weeks later, I'd have the same nightmare. And I had this about 4 or 5 times, the age of 10, soon after this UFO sighting. And I remember the last time I had it, I got out of bed, I ran down the hall to my mum and stepdad's bedroom. And I remember looking back, and in my head, I thought to myself, I hope they don't come for me again. And that was the end of that. Never had that dream nightmare ever again. And then, so that was that episode over and done with. Um, and then we moved. They split up. Excuse me. They split up, and then we moved in with my nan and granddad. We lived there for a couple of years, and then from my nan and granddad's house, we then moved to Birmingham, England, which is about 160 miles away. So in America, that's like down the road, whereas in England, it's we would consider that a long way.
I used
160 miles. So
I used to drive almost 100 miles to my office for my job last year. So for me, that's not that far.
yeah, as I say, in England, yeah, 160 miles, 200 miles is considered like a questionable journey. Let's put it
Right.
that way. So we moved to Birmingham, um, and nothing of any significance happened until I was about 15, and I woke up in the living room, standing up. Now, I've never slept walked before. I've never slept walked before, never slept walked afterwards. But I was 15, and I woke up standing up in the living room, and I'd organised these rolls of wallpaper into the shape of what I thought was Stonehenge. That was that. So that was that kind of episode finished. Went back to bed, thought nothing of it. The only reason I'm mentioning these things is because over time I've spoken to other people that have had UFO and alien encounters, and they've experienced very, very similar things. So whoever's listening to this podcast now, who may have had the same experiences, it may strike a chord with them. Um, in '94, so I'm kind of going in chronological order. In '94, I would have been 17. I was at college, and I met my uh, partner Lucy. She was 15. I was 17, and we we started dating. And I went to her house one evening, and she had a box of photographs, and I was just looking through them. There were random sort of photographs of this, that, and the other. And I pulled out this one photo, and I said to her, "What are you doing? You know, what are you doing with this photo? You know, what's the story behind this photo?" And she said, "Oh, I just took it randomly when I was younger in the '80s." So she would have been about 6 or 7. She had like a little camera. She said, "I just took a random photo, and that's what came out." And I said that this is in the photo was my sister, my aunt, and my nan. So how, if you want to go down the road of synchronicities, if you like, that's probably the biggest synchronicity that I've experienced. I don't know if I've explained that story well. So if you imagine I've come up from London to Birmingham, which is 160 miles away. I've met this girl. She's got a photo of my family that she took randomly, and I took the photo back to my family, and I said to them, "Can you just clarify who these people are in the photo?" And they all said, that's your sister and your aunt and your nan. And I told them where the photo come from, and even to this day, we can't quite work out how that actually happened. Um, but we then moved in together. We finished college. We moved in together, and we moved from flat to flat and house to house, and we kind of bummed around different places. And we ended up in this one flat, and it was one evening. So we're talking probably 96 by now, 95, 96. We were, I was asleep on the settee, and she said that the room had changed frequency. And she said this black, while I was asleep, so I didn't witness this. This is Lucy that had witnessed this. Um, this black mist shape just came into the room, walked, moved through the room, and then out the other end. And then she said the frequency just went back to normal. It was as if she described it as the room was just changing channel, as if it was like a radio.
That kind of, I don't want to interrupt, but like
Yeah, yeah, go on.
the frequency part of it, I've always wondered. I've mentioned this several different times. Like when people see these different shadow figures or anything like that, I've said maybe they're seeing something from a different plane of existence, different reality. So maybe that she felt the frequency change because maybe it kind of did because this thing vibrates at a different frequency than what we were
Totally.
normally seeing.
Yeah, I totally get that. Totally get that. Um, yeah, if ever you speak to anyone that has had UFO encounters, um, you often find that they will say that there's a change in the kind of atmosphere around them, as if it's like a byproduct of. I mean, I'm using the term UFO and linking it with this black mist
Hmm.
shape thing, only because I mean, I'll go on to this later, but I've had other UFO and paranormal anomalies in the home as we get older. Um, so I'm only linking the two together. As I say, I've got no proof of that there was a UFO above the house at the time. It could have been a ghost. It could have been an alien. It could have been an interdimensional being. Could I don't know what it was. But then so we started. I mean, I was always into um, when I moved to Birmingham. I got really into the subject of UFOs, ghosts, paranormal. And I got quite um, in depth, went right down the rabbit hole, as it were. This is years before the internet and mobile phones, and so it was all books and conferences and things like that that we used to go to. And then I went on a camping trip with a couple of friends, and I'd had this really vivid dream of standing outside the my tent. We'd gone camping in Wales, um, and we'd had our fire, we had food, we'd gone to bed. But I had this such a vivid dream. I can still see it now. Vivid dream of standing outside the tent and being made to watch a UFO leave. And then I got back in the tent and went back to sleep. We came back home the next day or 2 days later, whenever it was. And I was chatting to Lucy about it. And I said, I had this weird dream about this UFO. And I was on the phone to somebody a bit later on in the evening. And as I mentioned this story, the phone just went completely dead. And we couldn't connect the phone again until the next day. And then Lucy was, I mean, this could be coincidence, but I'm just adding it in the whole sort of story anyway. Um, but there are little bits of other things that have happened that I've missed out. But I'm going to concentrate on the bigger things later. Um, so then Lucy was chatting on the phone to a friend of hers, and she said, "Oh, Leigh had this thing happen earlier where he was talking about this UFO story, and the phone went dead, and it just happens that the phone went dead again. Um, again, coincidence? Was someone listening? Um, we just don't know." Um, so then so we moved from that flat into the house that we're living in at the moment. Um, the house we're living in at the moment, we've been here now for about 22 years, and this is where we've had the most amount of activity. Now, I grew up going to church. I was never religious, but I was expected to go to church with my nan and my aunt, the ones that were in Lucy's photo. I had to go, when I was sort of 8, 9, 10. Didn't enjoy it, but I kind of got a bit of a understanding about the Bible and stuff like that. When I moved to Birmingham, I kind of got more into the idea of UFOs in the Bible, and most importantly, the Book of Revelations. And I used to read the Book of Revelations, but page after page after page, and I used to try and decipher what the book was going on about. But yeah, I kind of have to go backwards and forwards with different things that have happened, and they'll all link together in a bit later on. So I've got this side of me that is really interested in, the Bible and UFOs, and we moved into this house that we're in at the moment. So we had 2 children by then. And it was when we very first moved in, and we had a cat. And the cat was scratching at the back door, and Jessica, our eldest daughter, she would have been probably about three or four at the time, and she was laughing at the cat trying to get in through the. She was sort of scratching at the window, and I had my hand near behind her. Can't really describe it, but she had her hands behind her back, and I was sort of holding her hands at the same time. And I felt as if someone had grabbed my wrist, and I looked down, and there was no hand there. Jessica's hands were tiny. This felt like a grown adult's hand around my wrist. And then I thought nothing of it. And then about a minute later, Jessica said to me, "What was that?" I said, "What was what?" And like I say, she was about 4 or 5 at the time. And she started rubbing her arm up against the settee. And she said, "It feels like someone's just run their hand up my arm." I said, "Well, it wasn't me." And then I twigged, I've just had the same, um, I've just had the same experience. Someone's just grabbed my wrist. Someone's just touched her arm. There's nobody else with us. So that was a bit of a ghostly encounter. We never got to the bottom of that. But as I say, I used to really, really, really study crop circles, religion, and it got to the point where I think it was 2010. I'd spent years and years and years really bogged down with trying to understand the UFO phenomena, piecing things together. And at the time, 2012 was approaching, and there was a lot of talk about big things, Earth changes and things like that. And I got to a point where I was so depressed by the whole phenomena that I decided I woke up one morning with an absolute sense of dread, and I couldn't shift this feeling of impending doom. And so I got all my books, um, and I got rid of them, got rid of all my books, stopped listening to heavy metal, tried being quote unquote normal. And this lasted for about 2 or 3 weeks. And I go to work feeling really depressed, um, because I just overdosed really on all things paranormal, and I didn't have any answers. And that's um, when 2012 approached. That's when things really kicked off for me, um, because it seemed like, uh, I pushed all this stuff away, all the religious stuff, the UFO and the Bible. Couldn't get my head around what I was trying to achieve from it all. And then it was as if overnight I had this awakening, if you like, and it was as if the paranormal world said, "Okay, if you're not going to be on board with us, now this is my kind of terminology. If you're not going to be on board with us, we're going to show you exactly what we mean." And that's when all sorts of things happened, in quite a short kind of space of time, and it was almost as if a portal had opened up around the house. Um, I'm just trying to my notes. So yeah, it's about 2012. The first thing that happened, I woke up during the night, and there was, I can only describe it as a jellyfish, just coming through into the room, and I watched it climb up the wall. I mean, I don't take drugs, never smoked, so I've never had anything like that. Um, Watched this jellyfish just come into the room and out through the wall. Next couple of days, um, it was, I think it would have been early July, I think, and blue sky, and we had these planes going over. Now we get a lot of, whether your listeners believe in them or not, we get a lot of chemtrails over here. Um, and the one day, 2012, we had a fleet of planes going over. I think there was about 5 or 6 of them, and they were doing a circle of the city. And as they came overhead, I was in the kitchen, and I looked up and I could see them coming over again, and I could see these orbs just appearing in the actual chemtrail itself. And I thought, bloody hell, I haven't seen a UFO since I was 10. Some orb would appear in the chemtrail. Probably say it was the size of a large car, and it'd float along with the chemtrail, and then it would blink out, and then another one would appear. And I think I counted like 5 in the space of like 10 minutes. And so we were watching these, and I called Lucy. And I said, "Come and have a look at this." And we were both watching these orbs, and that was the end of that. And I thought, well, if I'm seeing these things, if these things are showing themselves again, I'm going to buy myself a pair of binoculars. So I bought a pair of binoculars, um, and I put them. They're still there. They're still by the back door. So I left them by the back door just in case anything else happened, and I got my binoculars just in case. Now, I said earlier that I'm a landscape gardener. Back then, I just used to do or just basic gardening, and at the time, I was listening to a lot of podcasts about UFOs and encounters and stuff like that. And there was a guy that it wasn't Stephen Greer, it was some other guy that was going on about CE5, where you can call these UFOs down, and they'll appear to you. And I was listening to this, and I thought, I'm sure I could do this. So I think it was lunchtime, and I was at the back of one of my customers' gardens where I used to work. There were big £1 million houses, massive gardens, loads of land, in a place called Edgbaston. And so I was sat at the back of the garden of the customer, and I thought, right, I'm going to do what this podcast, what the person on this podcast was describing. So you just sit and you meditate and you ask. So that's what I did. So I'm meditating, and my customer had gone out to play golf. So I was just sat there in the back of the garden on my own, and I was meditating. And in my head, I was saying, I'm calling out, with respect, and all that sort of spiel. And I started hearing these helicopters. And I thought that's what I'd summoned. I thought I'd summoned these helicopters. So when I walked onto the lawn to see what this helicopter was doing, there was actually an orb the size of a car, a black. I described it as a Pokemon ball. It was kind of grey, dark underneath, and then another shade of dark on top. And this was quite a little bit above treetop level, above the houses. Probably, if you're looking at the clock, probably 10 o'clock as you're looking up. I don't know what degree that would be. And this orb thing was just moving towards me, and there were 3 military helicopters just circling it. And the whole thing was dangerous because it was above. There's a reservoir nearby, Edgbaston Reservoir. There should have been a lot of witnesses to it. I've never read any accounts other than my own. And this, what I described as a Pokemon ball, was moving towards me. And these military helicopters it looked like it was ushering or bullying this ball away so it couldn't come anywhere near me. So I'm stood there. And of course, I didn't take a photo of it, didn't take a film. I had my phone on me. I don't think I had an Ericsson phone. I don't think it had a camera on it or anything like that. But even if it did, there was no point. I didn't even think to take a photo of it. So once that had finished, that had all moved back into the sky away from where I was. So I'm stood there dumbfounded. So I phoned Lucy up and I said, you'll never guess what I've just seen. I went to explain what I was seeing, and she said, before you go any further, she said, who's on the phone with you? And I said, there's no one on the phone. I'm on my own. And she said, I can hear voices on the phone. And I said, no, I'm literally in the garden on my own. Again, we don't know who she was hearing. So that was the next kind of UFO that we saw, or that I saw. So we had the chemtrails with the orbs. Then a week later, I've had this helicopter, this orb, Pokemon ball type thing that I, for all intents and purposes, summoned out of the sky. And then all of a sudden, I start getting these military helicopters flying overhead everywhere. Everywhere I went, then a few times a day. When I went home, they'd be over the house. If I went to the shops, you'd have one go over. And this was it just got to a point where I was texting Lucy every day saying, there's a third military helicopter that's gone over. It's a fourth one. I got bored of texting her, telling her how many helicopters I was seeing, and they were flying relatively quite low. And then, so we, so again, this is all happening in the summer of 2012. So a couple of nights later, we were dancing in the living room. We were having a drink, and we were chatting to somebody on Messenger, and they were in America. Now, I used to be part of a crop circle Facebook group, and I'd befriended a few people from that. And this woman was part of that. So we were chatting to her. It was late at night. So if we're, say, 10 o'clock, it would have been probably 6 o'clock there. So we're dancing around and everything was merry. And we said, should we wrap it up for the night? Should we go to bed? Yeah, yeah. Okay. So we agreed we'll go to bed. So we shut everything down. We said goodbye to our friend. And we walked into the hallway to go to bed. And there were these two orbs in the hallway. Now these orbs were, one was head height, the other one was ankle height, and they were pulsating. One was red, sorry, one was blue, one was orange, and they were. I can only describe it as pulsating, like fizzing. They were like fizzing really quickly, pulsating and fizzing, um, and I knew that we'd had something to drink, but we both stopped, and Lucy said, "Are you looking at this?" And I said, "Yeah, I can see this." And then they vanished. Um, and then we just went to bed. We didn't think anything of it. And when we spoke to our friend the next night on from America, uh, I said, oh, we had this experience last night when we went to bed, and she said when I switched my computer off, she said I saw an orange um, orb in the living room. Now she was, she lived in America. We're in England, so there's. I'm not quite sure where the link is with her seeing an orb in her living room and us seeing these flashing orbs in our um, hallway. Anyway, that was that. We put it to one side, and then I was hearing this animal. This is all. This animal noise was all within the same kind of time frame. I kept hearing this. It sounded like a between a dog and a cat kind of growling and meowing at the same time, but it was kind of faint and it was coming from the hall. And I kept hearing this every other night. Um, and I didn't really say much to Lucy about it until she said to me, I keep hearing this noise. And I said, what what does it sound like? So she told me that um, she keeps hearing this animal noise, this between a cat and a dog, growling and meowing at the same time. And I said, well, I keep hearing the same thing. And we couldn't really work out what that was. And we'd gone to the cinema, Lucy and I, and we'd left our youngest daughter. She would have been, uh, she would have been about, I'm going to say 12 at the time, about 12, 10, 10 between 10 and 12. And she was with a friend. Lucy and I had gone to the cinema, and Lucy's phone kept going off while we were at the cinema. And I said to her, turn his phone off, watching the film. And she said, it's Neve. Neve's our youngest. She said, it's Neve. She keeps phoning. She said, I'm going to have to take this phone call. So she went out and she came back and she said, you're never going to guess what she's just been telling me. And I thought she was going to say she'd made a Ouija board or something. And she said, no, no, no. She had her and a mate a chick scared on the settee because they can hear this animal in the hallway and it sounds like a cat and a dog, but they can't work out what it is. And they're absolutely terrified. So we had to cut the film short and come home. We kept on hearing it. Um, for weeks on end. And we go out into the hall. We still couldn't work out where this thing was coming from. Um, another night, another afternoon, um, we were playing badminton on the field, and we were we were wrapping it up at about 5, 6 o'clock. The sun had gone down, and we both noticed the sky was really weird. Um, there was a grid. You could see a grid, and it was like a ghostly grid that was just hovering, like coming in and out of um, existence, if you like. It was really faint, but now I knew that it wasn't the rays of the sun because it, we've lived here for we'd lived here enough times to enough years to know what the sun looked like coming down when it was setting. This was a grid high up in the sky, and we were kind of wondering if some kind of portal had opened and things things are coming in, things are coming out, things are we'd had this we've had the orbs that were in the house, we had the orbs that were in the sky above the house, in the chemtrails. We heard this strange animal thing. Um, and then it kind of came to a bit of a head when I was at the computer desk on the computer, and I heard this plant pot fall in the hallway, in the porch. This plant pot just fell randomly, and I looked, and in my head it was like a trigger, and the trigger was go outside, you're going to see something. Now, right in front of me were my binoculars that I'd bought previously from a couple of weeks ago when we'd seen the chemtrails. So I took the binoculars. I went outside. Like I say, I was told in my head, it was like a telepathic um, message, whatever you want to call it. So I'm looking up at the sky with the binoculars, and I can see this line. So the sky's blue, and there's clouds, faint clouds all the way around. But there's a big patch of blue sky, and I'm just looking with the binoculars, and I can see this line. Looks like a little line, like way up in the atmosphere, and it's coming down. And obviously, as it's coming down, it's getting bigger and bigger. And the only way I could describe it, this thing, whatever it was a caterpillar. Now, this caterpillar, I call it a caterpillar. It came down and it was just below cloud level. So I'm not quite sure how high that would be. Anyway, I've got this thing in my binoculars, and it's filled up the binoculars. You can see everything, every detail. Now, this thing was made up of orbs stuck together, and they were red and white. And at the end of this caterpillar, were these two hooks, and the hooks were kind of pivoting. They were moving back like around. And the top of the caterpillar was like a big ball, but it was in a cup. And the ball itself, the head of this caterpillar thing, had horns. And the head of this thing was moving inside what looked like a cup. And it was luminescent, so it was glowing from the inside. And it had what looked like protrusion, like arms, but like made up of more smaller orbs. And this thing was writhing around, and it looked like a caterpillar caught on a thread. That's the only way I could describe it. And this thing was writhing around. Now, this was on the 15th of July. 15th of July 2012. And Lucy said to me out of the blue, oh, that was it. I called her and I said, Luce, come and have a look at this. So she grabbed the binoculars and she looked at this thing. She said, is it an angel? And I said, an angel? What? I mean, we're not religious. We've never, got no interest in religion at all by now. Well, she hasn't anyway. And she said, an angel? And I said, no, it's not an angel. I said, to me, it looks like a biological UFO. So I called the children. The children looked out the bedroom window. They've got a better eyesight than I have. So they were looking at it with their naked eye. And they'd obviously said a few choice words. They couldn't understand what this thing was. And this lasted for about a minute or two. And then it just rose back up. And that was the end of that. And then we came in and it set my brain going again. And I thought, I've got to find out what this thing is. And Lucy said, no, just leave it. We don't know what it is. Don't bother with it. She was so dismissive of it. But I was dead certain I needed to find out what this thing was. So I did, trying to do a lot of research. That evening, we were sat watching TV, and we had a big cabinet, big pine cabinet, and on the cabinet was a fish tank, and on the wall was the mirror, and next to the fish tank was a lamp, and we was watching TV, and this stream of light just came out of the lamp. The only way I could describe it is when Sally Ann in was it Sally Ann or Mary Ann in Poltergeist? She's sat watching TV, the static, and the hand comes out. It was exactly the same as that, but it was just one long stream of light that just came out. It wasn't a ball that separated. It was a stream that came out of the lamp. I sort of described it as a bent piece of copper, and then it went into the mirror. And then Lucy and I just looked at each other, and we just thought, yeah, that's fine. That's just another weird thing that's happened. And that was kind of like things started to settle down after that. Nothing else happened then. And then it was only a few years ago that I just happened to be flicking through a crop circle book. I'd got rid of all my books, but I kept a crop circle book. And I just happened to be flicking through the crop circle book, and I came across this crop circle, and it was from 1994, and it was called the Scorpion crop circle, and it had been laid July the 15th. Now, if you Google on images Scorpion crop circle 1994, you'll see the crop circle I'm on about. That is the exact representation of the UFO that I saw in 2012, July 15th.
What was the date again?
July 15th.
Of 2012.
So that was my sighting. The crop circle appeared in 1994, July 15th. So again, you've got this synchronicity. I've seen this biological creature thing, and it's an exact copy of a crop circle from '94. And it's only tonight, before I started talking to you, that it dawned on me. I always thought, when I put the two and two together and the dates were the same, I put two and two together and I thought, okay, so maybe the creature that I saw, the biological UFO, is are the is the thing that has caused some of the crop circles, because some of the crop circles from '94 look very similar to the scorpion one that I've just mentioned, and I thought maybe that's what's creating them. And it's only tonight I wondered, could that UFO that I saw had just taken on that form as a way of um, fooling me? Because I think when you when you delve deep into the UFO field, you see there's a lot of I think there's a lot of deception going on with it. A bit like the paranormal, like when you do a Ouija board or a seance, you never quite know who is coming through. And I wonder if the UFO phenomena is very similar, where it's like a cat and mouse kind of, very deceptive.
Hmm. When it comes to the whole UFO thing in general, I don't really. A lot of the time, I think a lot of the things that people are seeing are us in the sense that some of the craft might be government, military, and they're keeping it secret.
Yep.
And then a lot of the time, I'm like, when people say they see these things and this and that, I'm like, I don't doubt that you're not seeing things, but I don't know if they're necessarily aliens or extraterrestrial or whatever you want to call it. I don't know if
Mm.
it's that. But lately, with these orbs and these smaller things and some of the things that are doing a lot of the crazy movements, I don't think a human could survive the movements. That's where I start to question, especially things that you see bleed in and out. Like those are almost like the stuff that's coming in and out of our reality.
Well, if you think about it, if you if you remember the story that I said about when we went into the hallway and there were flashing orbs, if you lived in Ireland 56 years ago, they would be considered fairies. If you lived in Scandinavia, they'd be considered goblins. But because we have a bit more of a understanding of UFOs and stuff like that, we associate it with, well, I associate it with UFOs. So it's almost like a cultural thing,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Although there was no form to these orbs, they were pulsating. When you look at pictures of, Victorian pictures of fairies, they often appear to have what look like um, sparkles of light. They often sparkle, and I think I often wonder, are what our ancestors have seen, when they've called them fairies, are they actually part of the UFO phenomena? When you have fairies that take children away in England, a lot of old houses, you'll have a shoe, like an old. I think they used to put a girl's shoe in the wall at the top of the stairs.
Mm-hmm.
And what that was to do, that was to fool any goblins or sprites into thinking that there was a girl there, because it was often the boys that were taken. This is um, old English folklore, and you can still find these shoes, um, and the stories behind these shoes. People believed that strongly that their children were going to be taken away by these spirits or these, you know, fairies or whatnot. Um, but then if you think about the alien abduction um, scenario, it all it's almost like the same story, but with different characters. The alien abduction you'd have these small creatures coming and this is sort of what people have suggested. Um, Small creatures, greys, large eyes, they come in, abduct you in your sleep, do experiments with you, and drop you back. It's very much the same as the goblins and fairies that would
Hmm.
take children. So what I'm saying are we just catching up with what folklore has been telling us all along?
I've had conversations with others too, and I've said it multiple times. I think a lot of this stuff is related one way or the other. Like when it comes to UFOs, when it comes to Fae, when it comes to even paranormal, they're encrypted, like the things that are we're all experiencing. What if it is all connected in the sense that it's all from this different existence that we don't normally see, but that's what comes over into our reality? We're
Yeah,
calling them aliens, we're calling them demons, we're calling them whatever. What if it's all one and the same? It's something from a different frequency, a different plane of existence that we can't normally see or interact with.
yeah. My question then would be, um, is it the individual that is causing these things to be attracted to a home, or is it something else? Is it the person, or I don't know.
A lot of people that have experiences seem to have a lot more experiences than the average person. Like if just from doing this show, and I've said it, and now that I've said it, to me, it's like I kind of go back on it. But originally, I always thought when people had all these fantastical stories, I saw a UFO. Well, I also saw this, and I've got paranormals. I'm like, well, how is some person having all these experiences? It makes no sense. Why would you,
Yeah,
what makes you special?
yeah.
And the more and more I've looked into it, that connection is there.
Oh,
So
gotcha. Yeah,
so
yeah,
my perspective has kind of changed in the fact when people say they've had all these experiences, I don't necessarily just write it off because maybe they are having all these experiences. And again, like you said, is it the person
Well,
or
this is why I said to you right at the beginning when we saw this. When Lucy saw this black figure come through the room, and she said the frequency changed.
hmm
That's why I said earlier on, um, whether there was a UFO um, around, or if there was some kind of interaction that we didn't know about, and that was a byproduct. If you take a fighter jet and you fly it um, at the speed of sound, or just over the speed of sound, you have a sonic boom. That's a byproduct of the plane interacting with the atmosphere around. And I wonder if because I mean I've watched quite a lot of most haunted and ghost investigations and things like that. And there was a particular American one years and years ago, and what they realised was that the house that was having all this activity, the house was wired in a particular way where all the wiring was kind of going in a loop. I know you have a ring main
hmm
for you downstairs and the same upstairs, but the particular way this house was wired meant that um, they were suggesting that it was almost creating a kind of vortex, which was attracting these experiences. So I'm wondering if the propulsion of a craft has the same effect on the atmosphere, which then the byproduct of that is it opens up these kind of portals, rifts in time, however you want to say it, and lets these things come through.
hmm it's weird in the last few years how more and more people are starting to lean this way. And I don't know if it's because of podcasts and people are listening to stuff like this and their minds are more open to it, or are we possibly all just starting to tune in more to that? Because I feel like 10 years ago, if someone would have said something like this, most people would have still throwing you out, it's called you crazy or whatever. But today
But the
it's
thing,
it's not
yeah,
so out there.
when all this happened in 2012, I started getting messages from people that did podcasts and who did run UFO groups, and I was asked to be a guest speaker at quite a well-known UFO conference in London. So I went and did that, and I always remember it was my first proper big talk, if you like, and I think I went into a lot more detail than what I've done tonight. But the one thing I said, and I always remember starting it off, and I said, what I'm going to tell you, if somebody told me, I probably wouldn't believe it. And that's how I used to start my talks. Because, and I think the thing is, um, I think over the years, people, there's more platforms for people to talk. There's more platforms for people to be open. And the more people that do these talks, I mean, the reason why I'm sat up at 3:30 now in the morning is because I want to get my story to other people that may have had similar experiences that can then message me and say, I've had this strange thing happen to me that's just the same as yours. And maybe over time, put pieces of the puzzle together.
I think there's so many puzzle pieces out there that we're only getting bits and pieces. I listen to some other podcasts and they've said it the same way I just kind of did. We're all fed little pieces, and I think there's a lot of us trying to take these weird pieces and put them together for this big puzzle.
Yeah.
And we're still missing a lot of the pieces.
I think I think when it comes to maybe the government and what the government know, I would recommend not even bothering to pay attention to what you think the government knows. I would pay more attention to what the average Joe down the street is talking about on these podcasts. That's where I think the phenomena is kind of real. That's where you're going to get the real stories from. The problem with the main we have it here on mainstream TV now, where years ago they put a story out on the news, and it would always be accompanied with X Files music,
Mm-hmm.
and it wouldn't be taken seriously. Whereas now they're kind of almost owning a narrative. So what you'll find is that what you see on the mainstream and what the government tell you is a narrative that they want you to go along with, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the narrative of the individual that's experienced it. And I think, I mean, I've spoken to countless other experiences, and their stories are some of them are far more exotic than mine. Some of them are not quite as exotic, but they still have elements of strange things that have happened um, that need listening to, and with a bit of discernment, piecing together. What I was going to say earlier, though, when I was talking about the Bible and the Book of Revelations, the one thing I'd come out of this depression, if you like, and it was self-induced from overindulgence of the paranormal and stuff like that, as I explained earlier. But the one thing that the eureka moment was the Book of Revelations is a classic UFO abduction, which um, I I did a radio show like interview, and I had to go back 3 times. Well, I did it three weeks, consecutive weeks of about 3 hours each time to try and explain what my theory was. Um, my theory, as far as I'm concerned, makes total sense. Um, so this whole alien abduction, alien interaction, UFO interaction, in my eyes, goes way back in throughout history. probably pre. It's probably something that we've always had. It's nothing new. It's not from hasn't it never started in 1947. With Roswell, it was going on thousands of years before that, as far as I'm concerned.
If you
And
look
that's what,
into the lore of Europe, you mentioned like the Fae. There's been stories long before 47.
yeah,
And I don't want to throw in the ancient astronaut theory because it gets tossed around all the time, but I still feel like there is some bit of plausibility to that in the sense of when you look at pyramids and how they were built. I
yeah,
understand they claim that they were done by slaves and they were being pulled by pulley systems.
yeah.
Okay, that's whatever. They can that maybe that's true, but how do you can how did everyone evolve to the point to where there was pyramids in China, pyramids in Egypt, pyramids in South America around the same time frame? What made everyone start building pyramids?
Do you want to
Like,
hear my theory, my ancient astronaut theory?
sure.
Right. And I think we're seeing it unfold as we speak. We're seeing it unfold now, and I'll explain. My belief is that thousands of years ago we've had high technology, high, advanced civilization. I also believe that we probably managed to go off planet. Some of us, at least, off planet. Now, if you think today we've got people in um, remote islands that have barely seen another modern human being, and they still live in as fishermen in huts, and that's their way of living. They don't even consider that there's anything other than what their island is gives them. And if you think back to the World War II, I think it was, America stationed a lot of their aircraft in the Philippines. And when the Filipinos saw all these planes, the, the the consensus was that they thought that they were gods. So then, when the war was over and all these planes left, they um, they wanted the gods to come back. So they saw the American airplanes as being piloted by the gods, and it's what's known as a cargo cult. And I believe that um, the world at the moment, we've got Elon Musk that is, doing these spacewalks and wanting to put humans on Mars. If you think how we've evolved over just 100 years, if you think where are we going to be in 50 years, we're still going to have people in the Amazon that are using bows and arrows to hunt. They're still going to be making wicker baskets while people like billionaires are walking on Mars in these £1 million spacesuits. So do you see the discrepancy between they're the same race of human being, but they're um, miles apart in their technology,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you imagine people that have traveled to Mars via Elon Musk, billionaires that have traveled to Mars. They're not necessarily farmers. They're not necessarily people that know how to work the land. Now imagine if the world was obliterated by a comet, and let's say 90% of the planet was wiped out, and all that's left is remnants of what was there before. But yet the people that had moved to Mars 50 years before come back, they would be considered gods. Now, if
Right.
the people from Mars, which aren't Martians, they're from Earth, but they just moved to Mars, but have come back to get more supplies, or and they find that the Earth's been obliterated by some comet, or a flood or whatever, and they find all the um, basic humans that are just scavengers now, those scavengers will see these people coming in from the sky and they'll think that they're the savior. Now, it's human ego to use that for your own advantage. So, my opinion is that that scenario that I've just explained happened tens of thousands of years ago and will probably happen again. So, the UFOs that we see today may not be from another planet, but actually from our, they could quite well be our ancestors that have moved off planet from an earlier catastrophe. That's just my kind of theory.
I've heard something similar to it, and honestly, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But I only start to wonder, and this is where it goes back to when people say they've been abducted, when they always, the descriptions that they give of what they see. But when you hear people talking about the Nords, the Pleiadian, whatever you want to
Yeah.
pronounce them as, they're described like us.
Yeah.
They're, so that's where I struggle with it because obviously I don't know. But you hear your grays, you hear your reptilians, you hear your insectoid. Like there's all these different sort of races out there, supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean that those are also too, or are we? That's where I don't know, and I don't think anyone really does. But
Although my sort of story, if you like, lends itself to a possible alien abduction scenario with the little workers, the
mhm,
UFO. I will never ever say that that's what happened, that I was
right,
abducted by alien. I won't ever, because there's no proof. Um, the whole abduction thing could quite well be a psychological um, story, could be something that is inherent in all of us and just comes out through the dream state when certain chemicals are released into the body during sleep. You know, that's another possibility.
hmm,
But the only problem with that theory is that you have people that have physical and multiple witnesses to things that have happened. That people that are your classic Betty and Barney Hill that are out in the car, that are out in a car. Um, they're driving and they both witness the same thing.
I actually had an interview with someone that mentioned that, and not to sound, I know everyone construes things as racism or whatever, but they claim in that interview that if you ever notice, you don't hear very many African American people being abducted.
Yeah,
That is the one time that that has been documented. But you don't ever hear about it that often. And I was thinking, I was like, you know what? That's kind of true. I haven't really heard from any, like any actual mainstream, I don't want to say mainstream, but like more known cases of that. Like Barney seems to be the only one that I can think of. And I don't know if that is because we're here in America, we only think about it here. Like, obviously, there's a lot of people around the planet. So it's narrow minded to say that doesn't happen. You know what I mean? But just
but
for like cases that
now
I've
that
actually heard about, I haven't heard anything about anyone else, at least in around America, that it's happened to.
now that you've just mentioned that, um, like I say, I've listened to countless podcasts of interviews with people that have claimed to be abducted and had UFO encounters. Now that you've just mentioned that, they're all white people.
Hmm.
I can't think of any um, black man or woman that I've ever listened to. It's always been. Is that because they haven't come forward yet, or is that just the demographic of the UFO encounter?
Which is weird in and itself as to why they would only want white people. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't make any sense to me either. Like
Yeah.
I look at it in the sense of what we do now. Imagine if you're out on a boat and you're trying to tag a shark. What they're going to do? They're going to tag it, pull it up there, they look at it, inspect, and then release it. We do that with almost every sort of animal. So if these beings are actual beings, kind of in the same sense of what they're doing with us, maybe they're picking us up, checking us out, tagging us, releasing us, and see what we go on and do. Now you've heard the horror stories of where they do the hibernation or the all that other like taking babies or whatever for God knows what reasons. And I'm not saying I don't believe in any of that. I don't really know. I've never experienced it, so I don't rule anything out. But I can't understand why they would need us to do that unless this kind of goes back to what you were saying originally that maybe we're actually offshoots from them. Maybe they are us that has evolved in space differently. Maybe I don't, like I said, I just spitballing here. But for me, when it comes to all that stuff, it's like, where does this, what is the point, I guess? And then when you look into the fact that it's only seems to be white people
Yeah,
being abducted, and a lot of the time it's the people that have the same blood type. I think it's typo negative blood type. It seems to be a real common trait between people that get abducted, the Rh negative.
that seems to be. I think they seem to have the higher percentage of abductees, or so-called abductees. They tend to have the Rh negative blood.
It's peculiar in the sense because even when I talked to another guest that brought this up, and I've, like I said, this is my way of putting pieces of puzzle together by talking to different people. But when it comes to cattle mutilations, they think that they use the cattle, the things they cut out of them, they're using those to grow fetuses. And I thought about the fact that, well, this blood type is a universal blood type for humans. So maybe they need those people's DNA in their blood to breed these hybrids. Maybe that's how they go about doing it. That's why they take these certain people because they can do that. And if they're using the cattle to embryo create whatever to incubate these babies, these hybrid babies, maybe that's what all this is for. But again, what is the point? Like, what are they using all these hybrids for?
If you so I've written two UFO books. One of them is about my experiences. The other one is the link between the Book of Revelations and the alien abduction thing. The one thing that you notice in the Book of Revelations is that it's the return of these gods that come and make the world a better place, shall we say? Um, and if you read David Jacobs' work, he used to do. I don't know if he still does it. I think he's probably in his 80s now. He used to do a lot of uh, regression therapy for abductees in the late 80s. And I read his book, Secret Life. I think I've still got it. Back in the early 90s. And all the accounts that he uncovered, the hybrid, he uncovered this whole hybridization program where these women were being impregnated, and then they'd carry the child for something like 3 months, and then suddenly the woman would not be pregnant anymore, but the fetus would have been taken. And I think you just mentioned that you spoke to another woman, was somebody else, about this scenario, and I think I listened to this. I listened to that podcast
Mm-hmm.
last week, and it was her name Elizabeth. Might have been
No,
Elizabeth. No.
no, that's Laura.
Um, but yeah, Dave, if you read David Jacobs' work, Secret Life, he describes how these women go under hypnotic regression. In their regression, they're taken onto these ships, and the hybrids that they see are in these cryogenic chambers, these tubes, if you like. So the womb, the cattle mutilation thing, and using the wombs of a cattle Not sure if there's any correlation with that. I've heard um, I've heard a few stories about cattle mutilations. Again, it was big in like the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Um, in England, we had it where cattle would be just dissected, blood taken, eyes, everything taken surgically, like laser precision. Um, I'm sure that I listened to a podcast about it, about an expert in the field, and I think the consensus was that it was almost wasn't any real point to it other than to prove that they had the technology to do it, and that was kind of like the start and finish of it. There wasn't much of a point to it.
Seems weird though that they would just do it just to do it. It's like, hey, look, we can do that. Why don't we just show up down here and prove that you exist? Like, I don't. What would be the secret of that and that concept? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but
I don't. I mean, look at the crop circle
right.
phenomenon. You know, um, I know, I know, kind of second, third hand people that are supposedly involved in creating the crop circles, but then when you look at them, the crop circles, and you see how quickly they're made and how intricate they are, it does kind of make you think, well, after 30, 40 years of these being made, surely someone somewhere would know the secret.
There's some intricate ones that I've seen that just seems to be impossible, in my opinion, for someone to go out there and do in a matter of a couple hours. And again, I guess it's cool that you did that, and it's people are making them like, cool, you made it this. Like at the end of the day, no one's gonna know. So what's the point? That's what I go back to with a lot of things. I always try and figure out like, what is the point? Why is people doing what they're doing?
Yeah. There is one. There is a crop circle that was an advertise. It was an advertisement, but a lot of people don't realise that it was an advertisement. Um, it was obviously circular, and it had what looked like um like a marijuana leaf in the middle, and all these symbols all on the outside of this crop circle. And I know for a fact that that was an advertisement from a glass a bong company that commissioned this crop circle. But again, people will believe what they want to believe, even if you tell them. It's like I'll tell you a quick story. When I was in this crop circles group years and years ago, there was all sorts of things that people were believing, and stories that were being shared. And I said to them, look, I said, I'll show you how easy it is to manipulate people. And I got this picture of the three pyramids, and I, in Photoshop, really quickly, put three beams of light coming from each tip of the pyramids. And I posted it on this group, and I said, there you go, that's how easy it is. And people started commenting on it, saying, see, I told you that the pyramids have these energy beams. And I said, what? I said, no, hold on. I said, I'm telling you that I created that picture. And they said, well, no, I don't believe you. This looks real to me. And I just thought, I'm telling you that I created it, and you're still not believing that I created it. And it was an eye opener to what people will believe,
Right.
what people want to believe, regardless of the facts.
I think people are just they hold on to that hope so much to their beliefs that they're real. And then I think we'd mentioned this off air.
It's
When I get photos of stuff that I don't see things that people are saying that they see, and they get mad at me over it because I don't see what they're saying. They're seeing like you're crushing their whole belief. So instead of seeing it as, well, maybe that's not real, and they're like, what they blame the other people for not being able to accept it, and they want to believe it so much that they manifest it in their own mind. They really are seeing what they're seeing, and the rest of us don't see it.
Then, if you think about it, it's the same with any education. You know, if you're if you're an archaeologist or a scientist, or you're a religious person, you know, you think of how many gods there are in how many different religions.
Mm-hmm.
You try and tell each one of these religions, the people that follow these religions, that they're all wrong because they all believe in something different. So they can't all be right. So they must all be wrong. That's how wars are created. You know, if you have science is another religion, as far as I'm concerned. You know, science will not look into certain paranormal things because it can't. A lot of paranormal things can't be replicated, so they're not interested because that's not science. That doesn't mean to say that these things don't exist or they don't carry on. It's just that science won't touch them because they have their own set of rules that they adhere to. Archaeology, that's the same sort of thing. You know, archaeologists will swear blind that like say going back to the pyramids were built for as a tomb, and they were built in 20 years or something. And then you know you do the maths on how many blocks are there or in each one, and it works out that you'd have to be quarrying each block, cutting it, shaping it, and moving it into place. I think once every 2 minutes, if you go along with what archaeologists tell you, you know. But yet you get people like Graham Hancock that come along and give them a bit more of a different perspective. They're not interested. You know, they vilified his Netflix work because it went against the doctrines that they were trying
Mm-hmm.
to hold up. Like I say, it's the same with religion. So with the UFO field, it's no different. You know, people want to believe because they do believe. They believe that there is something other than what is out. What is they believe that there are, you know, more civilizations out there, which is fine. But there's no real proof of it. You can believe it as much as you like, but there's no proof. There's no proof that there's life on other planets. We can only presume that you know, these ships that we're seeing, these strange craft and strange creatures, well, they must come from another planet because that's what we believe. That's what we've been led to believe.
I had someone trying to, I don't know if troll is the proper term, but I'd made a post recently and someone commented on there that this is all fake, nothing real, bunch of bullshit.
Mm.
Their picture, and if I guess I'm kind of a creep, but like they were a super religious person.
Mm-hmm.
So I commented back, being a little turd that I can be. I find it very discrediting that someone that believes in the existence of a religion, a deity. I don't know how I don't know the exact way I worded it, but basically, I find it strange that someone that believes in non-provable deities is criticizing what other people claim they experience because you're saying it's fake. There's no proof. There's nothing in existence, but yet you're believing in religion that also has no proof. Explain that.
Yeah.
And then he never responded. I'm like, well, why are you coming on here to talk shit to me and then can't back up a legitimate question?
The only thing that I will call out are CGI videos.
Right.
There's a lot of, if you work with CGI, if you work with Adobe After Effects, you become very CGI then becomes very clear when you see it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the same with AI. Um, I can pick out an AI picture very quickly. Other people can't. And, you'll get into these fracas with people because they're hell bent on withholding that this picture is real. And I'm saying to them, it's not real because it's AI. You can tell that it's AI. And they're, no, 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 it's not. You're working. I've been told that I work for the government
I
because
have
it
been too.
because you kind of you just have a little bit more knowledge about something, and people don't want to look stupid. I've I've got a Facebook it's called UFO discussion group, and I um set it up about 10, 12 years ago when I had all these things happen, and I only set it up really for other for other experiences, and there was about 300 people on there for quite a few years, and I only wanted people on there that had a story to tell. And then I started getting this influx of people that wanted to join the group. So I thought, okay, I'll open it up to other people. And there was one guy on there who dismissed everything, and I kept getting messages from the other people in the group saying, "Why haven't you kicked this guy out? Why are you letting him say that this is all rubbish?" And I said, "I'm keeping this person on." I said, because we need people like this to challenge what we believe. If you're not challenged by a belief, then you're you're then in an echo chamber where you're just surrounded by yes people that just agree with you, and there's nothing outside of that to say, well, what about this and what about that, and I don't believe this and I don't believe that. And I said, I welcome that. I welcome people um, that are going to challenge the UFO society because there are a lot of fake videos. There's a lot of odd stories and so I'm going to sneeze. Um, and I just think that we need respectful people that are going to challenge the narrative, if you like. They're going to challenge what's being said, and they're going to challenge a theory on UFOs, and they're going to challenge me on my beliefs, and I totally welcome that because I haven't got the answer, and I'm quite happy to change my mind if I hear something that um, is worthy of taken on board, then I'll do that, and it may be a little bit of information that shifts my perspective a little bit, and I'm happy to do that.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm not against anyone or anything, and I'm open-minded to a lot of stuff, but I don't like when people just randomly start attacking other people because they have a different set of
Yeah.
ideas or beliefs.
I just to finish what I was saying. I delete I did delete him in the end because he did get a bit too shirty, and I thought I've given you the benefit of the doubt. I've kept you on for quite a number of years. He was always popping up on the discussions, and he's always throwing like a spanner in the works. And eventually, I thought, do you know what? Actually, you're just being argumentative for the sake of it. So yeah, I agree. I agree with you there.
I feel like you mentioned something earlier, and I kind of said something off air, but someone you mentioned that you're a government plant, been accused of. I was too recently because my profile picture is when I was at the Indie PopCon for the podcast awards.
Oh yeah,
And,
yeah,
and because it says con in the background, that is what the subliminal messaging was that I was putting out there to everyone that I'm just a con artist. I was like, I'm a con artist of what?
Oh Christ! Oh.
So I was getting attacked about that, and I was like, okay, I just delete and block people. I don't even care.
So I said I live in Birmingham.
Hmm.
So in Birmingham, the main symbol, if you like, for Birmingham is the bull, because we have what's called the bull ring, which is back in probably 200 years ago, before we had a proper city. It was just all farmlands, and the bull ring was where people would come and bring their livestock to trade and sell and whatnot. So the bull ring became a symbol of Birmingham. So of course, Birmingham is the home to Black Sabbath, obviously Ozzy Osbourne, Judas Priest, loads of heavy metal bands, Led Zeppelin, all that. So the bull, they made this giant bull made of mechanical parts, and they named him Ozzy. Okay, so we've got this giant bull made of metal called Ozzy, and he's got red eyes. Now we had the Olympic, no, not the what's it called? The Commonwealth Games a couple of years ago, and the opening ceremony, they had this bull. They had the bull come out, and he had his red eyes. And you know the amount of people that commented that on Facebook that were saying how it was a satanic ritual, and how the bull is representative of, I think it was Baal, you know, this demon that eats children and this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I had to explain to them it's a heritage symbol of farmland, and they wouldn't have it. No, 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 no. And you know, if people want to see something evil in something, they've only got to see something red, and they're like, oh no, that's that's a plant. That's subliminal. You know, like your the con thing in your picture.
Yeah.
People. The thing is, people love something to have a go at. They love to be. A lot of people feel, especially in the kind of pseudo spiritual world, UFO world, they like there to be an enemy. They want there to be an enemy. It's like when you're a child, and you want to be rebellious. You know, you'll rebel against anything. And I think it's the same in, the spiritual world and, the truth seeker world. They want something to take a pop at. They want an enemy. They need an enemy. So they'll find that enemy somewhere.
They have to make something just in order to have something to be against. I don't understand the mentality, but that just seems to be how it is.
Yeah. And the problem that people like myself have is that when you try and explain this to people, you then become the target, and you then get accused of working for the elite, and you're one of them, and it's like a circus.
I've realized in the last 2 years of actually being involved in these communities, and I'm not even involved. I'm just a guy that talks to people every now and then. But I see it from the outside looking in. It is nothing but a giant shit show.
Yep. Yeah.
I see nothing but drama. I see nothing but people backstabbing, arguing, fighting. Everyone has their own truth. And if you don't agree that it's the truth on their end, then you're an enemy. And I don't know. Sometimes I question why I bother. I guess I question everything else too. So I even question my own sanity sometimes of why I continue to do what I do. But here I am.
I think you're doing a good job.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think you're doing a good job. And the thing is, I mean, you're going to get people, like I said to you off air, for every 100 people that you interview, there's going to be someone that's going to strike a chord, that's going to shift your perspective, in a different direction, which will make you question, even more. The more answers you get, the more what's the phrase? The more answers you get, the more questions.
Yeah. Basically, the more answers that I've been looking for, the more questions I come out with.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I've said that a time or two. I was like, I started this wanting to find answers, and I've been left with more questions than anything.
Yeah. It's like what I said to you. I mean, there's loads of little stories that I didn't add in this talk that we're having. Lots of little things where, um, like for instance, when I there's quite a few times over the past sort of 15, 20 years that I've come away from the UFO community, and I've just wanted to live a normal life and just watch crap TV and just listen to just shit music and just be quote unquote normal and just do normal things. And within a week or two of shifting my brain pattern, I'll have some kind of experience where I'll see something or something will happen that will draw me back in. And it's as if they say, you're not going anywhere. Not until you've done the other thing that I failed to mention is when I was a kid growing up, I always felt as if I had a mission to do something within the UFO world. And I think the more people you talk to that are experiences, if you like, you'll find that they all have a mission. They feel that they have a mission to accomplish. And I feel like my mission was to do with the Bible and the UFO connection. And so I've done that. And it's like now I don't need that validation. I don't need to see UFOs. I don't need to have that interaction anymore. I know a lot of people that they're still chasing, this thing. They're still, doing the C5 protocols. They're going out and they're trying as hard as they can to capture that elusive, flashing light in the sky.
I just hope they're not paying $10,000 for dinner with Stephen Greer.
No,
I'm pretty sure I said that on the last episode I recorded too.
the people that I know, I don't think they have 10 pounds to spend on anything, let alone 10 grand. That again, if you're, I used to run a remote viewing group as well, a number of years ago, and I think I charged, I think it was about £4 or £5, because what happened was we started to get odd bods that would just sort of rock up and wouldn't want to be part of the group, but they'll be part of the group, but they didn't know what the group was about. And we thought, right, we need to have some kind of, we need to charge people a minimal amount just to, just to show that we're doing something legitimate that isn't just
Kind of weeding people out
free
too.
for all. What? Sorry.
Kind of weeding out the ones that aren't really there to learn anything or try anything. They're just there to be there.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that was a fair. I mean that money just went back into buying, paper and pens and stuff like that, and petrol to go home.
Yeah. We have been going on for almost 2 hours, so it is probably getting close to 4:30 your time.
It's 10 past 4 now. I'm wide awake.
Hmm. I'm getting tired because I have work in the
I've
But
gone
no,
past that. I've gone past that stage
you've
now.
got past the stage, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to keep you awake now.
Hmm. You can try, but I've got little kids I've got to deal with here soon. My
Yeah.
son is very much a daddy's boy, so when he wakes up in the middle of the night, I am the person that he screams for. So
So
that's
it's got to be what 10 past 11 now where you are, isn't it?
yeah, it says it's a 11:12 p.m.
Yeah.
So I'm usually in bed by 11.
Yeah, I'm usually in bed by 11, but yeah.
So I got to get up and I'm up in about 5 hours from now, 5 to 6 hours from now. I usually am awake, but honestly, he decides to wake up usually around midnight. For some reason, he wants to get up out of his room, and I have to go get him and bring him into bed. So by the time I get in there, he'll probably start screaming for me. This is how my routine goes with him. But we can probably go ahead and wrap this one up if there's not much else you want to talk about. If there is, I mean, I'm good to go. It's just,
No,
uh,
I mean, I could fill in a lot of blanks, but I think, um, if your listeners want to get in touch and, um, you know, find out any more about little bits that I've missed, or if they've got stories that they want to tell me that I can kind of piece together, if they're similar to my experiences, then
mhm.
feel free.
If you want to send me any links or anything you have or email address or however they can get a hold of you, I'll make sure to leave that in the show notes. That way anyone listening can reach out to you.
Well, if I mean, like I say, my name's Leigh Thatcher, spelled Leigh. If you just see some long-haired guy, you won't go far wrong. It's a girl spelling as well, so there's not many Leigh Thatchers of the yeah. You'll find me if you just type my name in.
Well, Lee, it's been a pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, it's been really good. Thanks for having me on, Brandon.
Not a problem. And for anyone out there listening, just wanted to say thanks to Lee and thanks for listening. But we're going to head on out. So good night, everybody.
Good night.
And that's the show, everyone. I really hope you guys enjoyed the conversations. If you would like to be a guest on Tinfoil Tells, remember to send an email to tinfoiltellspodcast@gmail.com or go to the contact section of tinfoiltells.com to get your message to me. We'll get something scheduled for a future episode. And just remember, the truth lies in the stories we share, the connections we make. Stay curious, stay open-minded. Thank you all for joining us on this journey. And until next time, keep questioning, keep seeking, and keep exploring the unknown. Good night, everyone.
Tinfoil tails in the headphones. Yeah, it's time to rock. Got a story about a cryptid creature. Let's take a walk. Bigfoot, dogman, they're out there in the dark. But the truth is out there like an alien spark. UFO sightings got the whole world shook. Conspiracies unfold like a story in a book. Media control, trying to keep us blind. But oh, before gonna use my own mind. In history, they don't want us to know the secrets they hide, the truth they won't show. Dominate our society, they keep us in chains. But I'm standing tall, it's time to break the reins. Lose control, trying to keep us blind. But I won't be fooled, gonna use my own mind. In history, they don't want us to know the secrets they hide, the truth they won't show. Dominate our society, they keep us in chains.